Windish, and I'm on the board, and I was excited to be able to show you my time lapse. But before we do that, this year we decided, and I was a big advocate for deciding to do that. We initiated a new award, and it is the People's Choice Award. So people pick it, and we named that award in honor of Jeannie Hargrove. Jeannie Hargrove, it was a friend of mine. She was very helpful to me when I first came to Milledgeville. That photo, those are her pictures. And she was an entrant in every big click that we've had. She was a winner of several. She had her own exhibition, and we have a couple of her works here. And so we are pleased to name that award in her honor as she passed this year. She was a friend of the community and a friend of Allied Arts, and she did our books, and she took our pictures. So we're going to give the award, and to give the award, Brian Renko, our director, is going to do that.
Yes, we'd like to thank you all for coming, first of all. I appreciate your participation in this People's Choice Award. I'd like to bring up Steve Holzenbeck from the crowd as we present a little token of our appreciation. We're going to mail you your check, because I don't have one here. But congratulations on behalf of Allied Arts. Thank you very much, Jeannie Hargrove.
I also want to thank, in the audience, Billy Hargrove. The other thing I didn't say about Jeannie, she officiated at my commitment ceremony, and Billy stood with me in the place of my parents, and Jeannie's sister, Anna. Thank you for coming today. Oh, and board member Brenda Riley. Thank you for coming. And Sandra's probably going to walk in.
Yes,
Sandra Jones, our board chair. So, let's look at a time lapse. Thank you. I did that in the spring on my porch, and I had no idea what I was getting into as I started out with it. But so a little bit about me and my background. I call myself an enthusiast because I'm trying to figure out, like, oh, am I a photographer? Am I a professional? Am I, where am I? And my background is that I went to NYU Film School and I studied documentary, and my interest was video. So I went to film school, I never did a thing with film. Second thing was, I was a producer. Like, even in NYU Film School, to make a film, you had to get your crew together, you had to get, you had to compete with everybody. If you didn't get it in early enough, you just didn't get your film done. So I was very much, like, putting together a crew before I always had a project ready. I then went out and I was an independent producer of documentaries. I moved on to, I felt uncomfortable taking other people's stories and making them mine. And as a filmmaker, you do the choices and everything. And so I spent the bulk of my career working in community television, where I worked with people, where people would do, helping people tell their own stories. And that still is something that, I love YouTube, I love Facebook, I love that we can now tell our own stories and get our stories out there. I left television in 1999. I came here in 2003, and Jim put me to work in Georgia College. And one of the key things that I was doing is putting together a media lab, and that was making cameras and equipment accessible to the students. So I left in 1999. I left television. That was the year the first Final Cut Pro came out, so the version 1. What I'm saying here is that in my day, everything was analog, and the whole world changed since I left and came here, and then I was supposed to be the expert. So I got to learn it all again. And the other thing is, I never did my own stuff. So I never worked the camera myself. I didn't, I had a sound person, camera, I had a crew. So to me, over those years, I started learning. And so I got interested in time-lapse 5 years ago.
That little clip we saw, how much real time was that?
Oh yes, that was 3 weeks. Now the reason so key thing is, so what is time-lapse? It is taking a number of pictures and you get something over time. Most cameras now come with a time-lapse setting. And so you can do it automatically. You used to have to use an intervalometer to do it. That time-lapse I went out and did, and I wanted to get, and nothing happened to that time-lapse. It was a terrible time-lapse. And what I kind of like about it is that what I always try and do is hide all my stuff, all my mistakes. So in the time-lapse that we just saw, the orchid, I started out without covering the windows, and it's the porch that I use it's the main door, so going through, shaking everything, it was wrong, and then I gradually covered the windows, and then I put lights up, but I didn't put soft lights up or anything, but anyway, so, it was 25,000 pictures that I used to make that time-lapse. Not everyone was in it, because there were a lot of duds. Anyway, okay, so how do you do a time-lapse? You choose your subject, and it should have something going on. Again, my first time-lapse, I thought, oh, I'll get the sunset. And everybody wants to get a sunset. The sunset is a really hard thing to shoot in time-lapse. It would be good if there were clouds, so the day I shot, nothing happened. So you should have things that change over time. When shoot your regular shot, you know, composition matters, and I feel like I'm not the greatest composer of shots. And then you use all manual settings, including, like that camera has a power zoom. You don't want a power zoom because every time it closes and opens, it may change just a little bit. You choose the interval, and so you know, on this screen, the prior screen I said, you know, like 1 second for people walking, 10 seconds for a flower growing, you know, there's all this kind of stuff. What I end up doing is as much as the card will hold or as long as the battery will last. And, you know, I do that because, you know, I mean, there's only, some pros may be able to pull the card out and put a new card in if I can shake the camera or move it or something. So I just sort of, and I do figure if I'm going to have something slow, of course, I will slow it down, like the orchid, I forget, but it was, the orchid, it was about how much the card would hold. And so I think sometimes I was taking a picture one every 10 minutes, and then sometimes I was taking one a minute. And then I would, you know, the card would fill up, and also the last shot was a shot that I originally started with, which was over 2 weeks, catching that whole thing. But then you know, I get home and the camera had stopped, and the card had filled up, and how that card filled up and stuff like that. So, so I end up playing with everything in post-production. And what I mean by that, so typically it's 30 frames, or 24 or 30 frames a second. So if you shoot one picture a minute, and then you put 24 of them together, that comes up with 1 second. However, I end up wanting you can also do 30 frames a second, you can also do 60 frames a second, you can also slow it down or speed it up. So there's so many variabilities. I don't know what all the rules are. I try and I work till I get something I like. But the process is that you take that card, put all the pictures on the computer, and then there is this program called LR Time-Lapse. And what it does is you use it in conjunction with Lightroom. You load all the pictures in, you pick some key pictures. So if I have 1,000 pictures, the first, the last, and every 250 in between, and then you modify those, and then you load it into LR Time-Lapse, and it calculates transitions between every single picture and modifies the metadata on all of that. And it takes, for it to do that, it can take a half an hour. And then it will, it's evening out the transitions between. And then I do that iteratively, again and again and again and again. And the reason I do it that way is so that those you know, like when clouds are going by and all the different, and to get rid of flicker. Then you output them from Lightroom and bring them into After Effects or Motion to create your scene, your clip. And then you have your time-lapse, a time-lapse. But what ends up happening to me is that it's editing. So each sequence is a clip. Each clip can take days to process. I choose music now all the time for them because I want there to be a story. I mean, the orchid is kind of the easiest because the orchid opens up, but you know, the music kind of gives it something. So. Now, this picture is important because I use Micro Four Thirds cameras. The reason I use Micro Four Thirds cameras is they're small, and I can manage them and carry them around. But even a Micro Four Thirds camera, which is the size of the sensor inside the camera has so much more resolution than high definition video. So you see the green square, green rectangle is the size of a high definition video screen. So by using the full size picture, I can wander around within. So when you saw the motion on the orchid, that's one big picture, and I am zooming in or rolling around inside the frame of that one picture. And so that to me is kind of a key part of giving the time lapse more interest, more motion. But putting that huge picture into those programs, so even though you work with, I forget even what it's called, you make low-res copies of it, or the program makes low-res copies of it, so that it's low resolution, so that the computer can handle it. But even then, it takes, it can take hours overnight to output a clip. And then I'll see that, okay, I want the orchid to move just like this, or I'll see one little thing and change it, and it takes hours to change it. And so I would say it takes me at least 100 hours, an easy 100 hours of editing any one of these. So the next one we're going to look at is birds nesting in my backyard. And afterwards I'll tell you the problem. So this one was shot over a month, and it, again, I keep saying 25,000. It's 20 to 30,000 images. It's freezing. Okay, let's try again. It might be that it's too fast for that. I'm gonna turn it this way so we can see them both. I don't know. I love these birds. Many people don't like this as much as the other ones, but looking at the birds this much, I must tell you I fell in love with these birds. So. problem with that one was, so you're not supposed to shoot birds in a nest because you make the birds vulnerable to being killed. And so I was way away from the nest, and I felt the birds, that was on my patio, the birds had learned to trust me. They saw me on the patio all the time, and I protected them from the neighbor's cats. But the problem was, I only had one shot of the bird from the front. They're all flying in, and you're only looking at birds from behind. So how can I make it interesting? So I stretched it out. Anyway, that was a big problem with that one. But I really love that video. It makes me very happy. And I spent a long time making, like the bird's head go with the music and stuff. And it really does do it. It's on my Facebook page if you want to see it. So the last one, and the specialist one, was shot in here, and it was 2 years ago. At this time right now, we had the mandala, the monks here doing the sand mandala. And I put a camera in the roof. I asked them to put a camera in the ceiling. I put a camera in the ceiling, and I'll tell you about that after we watch it. And I wonder, but I'm hoping that the reason the video didn't work on that one was because the wireless, it was too fast. So I hope that the video will work on this one. And this one is longer.
The opening ceremony, and after completion.
I'll try it again. I don't even know what to think. Anybody have any suggestions on how to get the video to play? Well, I'll do it again where we watch it this way. Can you see it?
During the opening ceremony and after completion, we invoke not only the deity, but whole entire environment, all deities and the whole environment mandala. We have to visualize that. Here we draw the actual image of the death floor on Lokiteshvara at the very center. On the red base, there are multiple parts out there. And you can see these are the different offerings. We call it zoke, with a deep throat singing in that long, maybe 6 or 7 minutes. So, yeah, it's that only one standard. And after that, they play on the musical instrument to symbolize the coming of all the Buddhas. We also play music for the those special guests and some high dignitaries. And Mandala, it shows the mansion with the four entrances from each direction. At each corner, there's a parasol, and underneath the parasol, there's the parasol is being held by the monkey. And that represents usually umbrella have us from project us from the sun to land. Likewise, here the parasol of its letting of practice of compassion and wisdom and so on and so forth. This protects us from our own inner mind, the heat of anger, jealousy, pride, so all this mind. Main activities of the mystical art of Tibet is to making the mandala, and there are three main objectives for doing this art. The first is to make the peace and harmony in this planet with the rich tradition of compassion and non-violence of Tibet. And the second is making awareness about the Tibetan and the culture, how it is facing now under the Chinese communist regime. And third, and since we are in exile, try to preserve all these ancient traditions, which we think if it is lost, and it is a loss of all humanity, something it is happening. It's a big loss for all humanity. After completion of the mandala, we do the closing ceremony or dismantling ceremony, we can say. And again, we do the invocation for the whole healing and harmony. As a part of that ceremony, then we visualize that all the deities and the whole environment mandala dissolve. then we collect the sand in the container. And of course we distribute some sands to the audience here. And take sand to the water and pour it here. We believe that this sand, every single grain of sand carries a healing property. And by pouring it into the water, the concept is that healing energy eventually touches the oceans and water evaporates and forms the clouds and bring it again as a concept of power again. And with that, we believe that the purpose of creation of the mandala has been accomplished.
So I'm sorry our video isn't working. But so the challenge with this one was the camera burned out on the third day. And so the camera in the ceiling died on the third day. So I never had a picture of the mandala. Fortunately, I don't think you noticed that there was no picture of the mandala in there. But I, like I was like the definitive picture that I was trying to get, I didn't get. And luckily, I had shot video too, and I did kind of intend to do what you just saw, but I intended to have the opening ceremony, then the time lapse of the whole thing, and the closing ceremony. And it delayed me for almost 2 years. Like, what am I going to do? I don't have a picture of the mandala, am I? So, all right. Resources. I don't know. I actually just Googled it again before I came here. I saw different ones. What I would say, if you want to do time lapse, is Google it, and I really mean that, and figure out because, and don't pay. Now, if you want to pay, like maybe there's something offered at Georgia College or continuing it, or maybe or Linda is actually charges, and Linda has a few time lapse courses, but I have found, just